let's talk about, just to touch on that. I don't want to talk exactly parallel to the discussion board post, which talks about decisions, budget decisions, and programs, but I do want to talk about programs a little bit, programs within the prison. So there's some controversy as we discuss corrections and correctional facilities, and it costs money to run a correctional facility. This money, for the most part, has to come from public funds. When I say public funds, what does that mean to you? Where does public money come from? So we got to feed, for instance, we got to feed inmates. Somebody's got to buy that food. Who's buying food? I'm sorry? The state, right? And where the state isn't necessarily a business. They don't create a product. So where's the state getting their money? They're not Walmart, so they don't sell a product and make a profit. Where is the state getting their money? There we go. Yeah. So public money is our funded, money that we funded, or businesses funded, or taxes. There's a ton of taxes. So when we talk about this public money, it's our taxes being spent. So when we make budgetary decisions, like in the discussion board post about which programs to cut, that's why it's so important, because the ability to generate more money doesn't come as easily as it would in the private sector. When you can just raise prices and things like that, you have to literally raise taxes or generate more revenue somehow. So the idea of having these programs, these influential, these social programs within the correctional facility is a little bit of a controversial topic because, well, let's talk it out. So I'll start over here, Mr. Core. On this, your first reaction, do you think it is beneficial for inmates to have the opportunity to get a high school diploma while incarcerated?
Well,
is there a benefit to that?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I guess it really depends on the inmate.
Okay. I'll buy that. In what way?
Some of them probably wouldn't care, but we're talking about like inmates in general, so like that can include the death row.
Sure, yeah, we can throw in death row inmates too, yeah.
Because they can be on the death row for years before anything happens, so there's no point in putting them through a program if they're bound to die.
Mm-hmm.
Just be a waste of taxpayer money.
I hear you. Then let's take that off the table then. So let's take your, I don't know, garden variety inmate. Let's say an inmate who's going to spend the next 3 years in state prison. We'll make a very specific scenario. Is it beneficial for a 25-year-old state prison inmate who never finished high school and is going to be getting out when they're 28? Is there a benefit for them to be able to get a high school diploma? Okay. Well, I'll keep going and keep it sequential. Patrick, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree or disagree with Mr. Gore?
I'd say I agree that it is beneficial for them to have programs to kind of help them make a path for them whenever they get out, so they have something to do.
I like the way you worded that, yeah. And high school is a little different. I'm gonna kind of bump this scenario up, but unless you go to a private high school, I trust everybody here went to high school. And unless you went to a private high school, you probably didn't have to pay to go to school. So the idea of, well, it's not fair for them to get a high school diploma for free. Well, we all got high school diplomas for free. So what's the difference, really? But let's change that to college. Now, when I went to school, I got a little bit of financial aid. So I got some money from the government. I was I wasn't very affluent. And so I was given some opportunity, some free money to go to school. I still had to shell out the rest. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on a college? degree, giving inmates an opportunity to obtain a college degree when, they can't really pay for it, right? They're not working. So essentially they're given the funds. Do you think there's a benefit to allowing inmates, that same state inmate, same one, but we'll say he's there for 4 years, and so he can spend 4 years in school. Is there a benefit to him having a college degree when he gets out?
I feel like if they're willing to do it, then it's beneficial for them, but then to get them all the resources for like college classes, that would be super expensive for people that pay for it.
Right. So if we take away the money aspect of it, it sounds like, and I'll keep going, I'll take away the financial aspect. Do you see a benefit in inmates having a college degree? Outside of liability, is there a benefit?
Yeah. I feel like the whole purpose of them being in the correctional facility is to act as a punishment for them and also kind of create like opportunities for them to not return into that correctional facility.
Opportunities to not return. Again, I like the way that's worded, and if you would do me a favor and just kind of put that in your back pocket and remind me to come back to that in a few minutes, please. Let's kind of go through it. Do you agree that there's a benefit in having a college degree for inmates if they're going to get out, like Brendan mentioned? College, death row may be a unique situation, but somebody who has a sentence that is going to end. Yeah. And do you disagree? So we have a 100% agreement that there's a benefit to inmates getting a diploma. In much the same way that I imagine that we all feel like, obviously I have at least one college degree, so I felt a benefit, and you guys are all sitting in this classroom, so you feel a benefit. So there is a benefit to getting a college degree in general for people, inmates being people, so there's no change there. Now the controversy, without getting into the details of each one of your lives, I shared a little bit. When I started college, I was broke as a joke. I didn't have a lot of money, and so I was able to get money from the government to help me pay for school. So I don't have a lot of standing to say, oh, that's ridiculous that inmates are getting free education, because although my education wasn't free, I got some help. But starting on this side then, throwing in that financial aspect, and we already said where the money comes from. It comes from our pockets. When you get paid at work and you don't get your entire paycheck, they keep some of that money. Some of that money is going to be trickled around and eventually make it to this program we're talking about. So, what are your thoughts on paying for, or having the government pay for, a program like a college program? Right, for him.
I mean, I don't agree with the fact that it's like, I don't know, my parents' money and taking out of their paycheck.
I didn't hear the very first sentence, whether you agreed or disagreed. You didn't, okay. So the benefit was a quick decision. That was an easy decision. Yeah, there's benefit. Now we're putting more thought into it. It seems like more nuance. It is what if I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right. What are your thoughts? Verbally compare your thoughts to her. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I understand where she's coming from, but also, they're in there for a reason. I feel like if we were given the opportunity to better their lives, they would not want to return from, therefore keeping the rest of the place.
So there is a cost to this program, but you're seeing, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that the benefit may outweigh that cost. Some things we have to pay for in life. I don't necessarily like fixing my toilet. And if I make enough money, I don't have to, right? I could pay somebody, and that's why I make money, so I could pay for things that I don't want to do. And in that same vein, maybe I don't want to have more people in prison so I can pay for that opportunity in a roundabout way. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say? All right. And that kind of goes along the same lines as what Mr. Soto Lopez was saying, that we're paying for or trying to have a goal of keeping people from coming back, right? There are, as people have changed their names, or excuse me, jurisdictions change their names from their departments of corrections, you'll see oftentimes, instead of being a Department of Corrections, they're a Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. For that very thing, to have that on the forefront. Is there a line in your mind as to where is there too much program? Can we give inmates too much in your mind?
Yeah, I think possibly too much, but at the same time, it might be a good thing, because I feel like it's important for them to have like a variety of resources available to them to help them like get out of whatever situation that they're in.
What are your thoughts on having inmates having opportunities that maybe you and I don't have? Do you have, when you talk about college, do you have access to a free gym?
No.
Do you think it's fair that somebody who's in prison, who's broken the law, can work out without paying for this opportunity, and you can't? How do you comport that in your mind?
I wouldn't say it's fair, but it's a good thing that you have it.
Why is that? Talk that out for me. So it's a good thing, and I can't disagree with you. We already said the high schools, there are benefits to giving these programs, and these are real service level programs, the gym and college. There's a ton of other rehabilitative programs, but these are just ones that pop into our minds pretty easily. And so I agree with you that there are some benefits here. So why is it okay, or why do you seem to be okay with not having it when you didn't, presumably you didn't commit a felony and they did, they're in prison? Why is a felon, somebody who couldn't obey the rules, why is it okay for them to get these and you still have to work and pay for a gym membership or college or private high school, whatever, all the things that you have to pay for that they get for free? Why is that okay?
Well, some people use exercise as a form of kind of escapism, and it can help them deal with it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that really kind of goes along lines with the counseling class as well. But yeah, it kind of sounds like you're saying some of the same things that we said over here, where we're okay paying for some stuff, but there's a line. So I'll keep going then. One, I'll ask you just point blank, do you think there's a line where there's just too much benefit? Is there a point where inmates can receive too much benefit?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that line exists, where is it in your mind? Can you give me a tangible example of what would be too much? Do what I do sometimes. I go extreme to make it easy.
Well, I feel like, because this will never happen, I feel like extreme would be like them being able to get money while they're in jail. Like if they had they were able to get, I don't know, another extreme like government job while they were in jail or something like that.
Okay. Initially what I heard you say, what was a little different, I thought there's a concept of universal basic income where folks can just receive money to help them live. And I thought you were saying they shouldn't just receive a stipend to help them live. But jobs, they shouldn't have be able to get a government job.
Yeah.
So currently there is somewhat of that, but it's very, very low paying. So whenever they work in the carpentry shop or making signage for the state, things like that, they do receive a little bit of money, but it's ridiculously low. A couple dollars, that type of thing. I couldn't quote the exact pay currently, but a couple dollars a day type of thing, enough to buy deodorant and snacks. Whereas it's not they're not putting any money in the 401k.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I hear you saying. Okay, can you touch that screen, please, so I can see them? Just touch it, thank you. Well, I'll kind of wrap it up and hear from you. Okay. One, I'll ask you the exact same question. Do you think there's a line that we can give too much, that inmates can receive too much? And if so, give me an example of what that line would be.
I think there's definitely a line where you could give them too much. I'd say, maybe, I don't know, the ability to go to restaurants or something.
Oh, so just really nice
Yeah.
food, right? I mean, that we have to pay. I mean, that kind of goes, I might have touched on it at the very beginning, we all have to pay for our food. Inmates don't. Is that a benefit, or is it just because they are a ward of the state, we have to take care of them? An involuntary ward of the state is how somebody once put it. Mr. Court, what are your thoughts? I get the same question. Is there a point where there's too much?
Yes.
And then if so, where is that line?
Well, I feel like it depends on the inmate.
Oh, so situation specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like, 2 years, not really a terrible crime. I feel like maybe there's a possibility in change, but if we're looking at someone who murdered someone, I feel like that criteria will affect.
So I'm seeing a theme in your answers, but I wanna make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. At some point, and without having you define what that point is, it's kind of a lock the key and throw them up and like, you've already passed the crossroads in life. We're not gonna change the way you're not even, you may not even get out of jail, so why are we gonna put a lot of effort into you? Whereas if you're gonna get out, then you're gonna affect me. When I say you, I mean, if the inmate is going to get out, then I should do something so that when that inmate does get out, they can benefit society. But if they are going to get out when they're 70 or never get out at all, forget about it. Is that kind of the theory that I'm picking up from you? Okay. That's an intriguing theory because it's an investment. Rehabilitative efforts are an investment. An investment has a return on your investment, an ROI, return on investment. If I put money in the stock market and I anticipate that stock market to go up on average 7% every year, then on average, I expect to get, for every $100 that I put into my 401k, I expect to later get at least $107 back, averaged out annually. If I invest in these inmates, these rehabilitative efforts that you were talking about, what return am I trying to get on my investment? What is my 7%? And I'll come back to you. What if I'm going to spend $100 on an inmate? What am I hoping? I'm not getting $107 back. What am I getting back?
Like ensure that they don't return it to prison and not reduce like the resources that have to be spent.
Societal ROI. I'm hoping that they don't return, that they don't break the law that will subsequently result in them returning to prison. I'm hoping that if I spend this $100, that I won't get my car broken into and I won't have to spend $107 to buy a stereo. That's my ROI. That's my return on investment, because I'm willing to spend a little bit of money, a little bit of my taxes can go to these inmates, and hopefully they won't go back. And it's more than just not going back. Hopefully they won't break the law, because going back is really just a symptom of the law breaking, right? It's not that I care if they go back to prison per se. I care that they don't break the law anymore. Going to prison is just a result of that. I don't want a society that has crime. I want to do everything I can to make sure that there's less and less and less crime. So I can either put more police out there to prevent crime, or if people do break the law and go to prison, then I can give them some programs, some rehabilitative efforts, and hopefully I won't need to have a police officer in every corner, because now they are less likely to break the law, whether it be through education, because now they have a high school diploma or a college degree, or they physically worked out, like Aubrey was saying, and kind of worked through use that as a counseling technique in conjunction with some other therapy, or they learned a trade. or any number of programs that are out there. Those are all going to hopefully result in less crime later and in the society that I have to live in. Let's talk about why we put people in jail in the first place. And even broader than that, why we punish them. This comes up in a couple different classes, so it may sound familiar if you haven't done the class with me. But then we came on this side, we'll come back over here. I'll start then. I don't know if you have any children, but have you been around a child? Have you seen a child? Okay. Have you seen a child not act right? And what happens when they don't act right? What are our options when they don't act right?
The way I was raised, we were not going to do anything wrong
There you go.
and not do it again.
So what are our punishment options for children? If we'll put you in the scenario of being a parent, a hypothetical parent, your hypothetical child, your pretend child, what are we naming your pretend child? Cosmo. Okay, your child Cosmo. You have just a ton of options if Cosmo doesn't act right. So Cosmo has looked at you in the eye and he said, don't knock the because Cosmo's a cat. So you told Cosmo, don't knock that glass of milk over. And Cosmo looked at you, laughed, bang, knocked that glass of milk over. Now it broke, it's a mess. Did it on purpose because they thought it was funny. Not funny, now you gotta clean it up. What are your options to ensure that Cosmo thinks about that twice next time? We have a ton of options. What are they?
Make it a learning lesson.
Okay, how do we do that?
Teach them the importance of not doing that because it doesn't harm somebody else.
But literally, how do you do that? How are you going to get their mind right? Talk? Okay. Okay. What else can we do? Not what are you going to do, but what can we do? There you go. You get booked. That's one of them. So we got a conversation. We can have a physical mind right kid. What else? What are other options? What was the yeah? All right. Any other? What kind of punishments have you seen or heard of? Grounded. So sent to your room essentially, right? Can't go out. Yeah. Go more. What else?
Well, especially if it was on carpet, I know my parents, like, they would pick up the glass, but then they would make me clean it up. Like,
I'll make you
the
clean it up.
Carpet cleaner and the vacuum and wiping it up. The whole 9 yards.
Okay. And a couple more.
I used to have to, I can't really think of anything that hasn't been said.
So we got grounding, physical punishment. Brendan, can you think of anything else?
I'll be honest with you, I had never been punished in my life.
All right.
Like, if my mom would look at me the wrong way, I literally would cry.
Is that a punishment in itself?
I guess it.
Why did you cry? Because I was similar. It was my fault.
I don't know, I guess it was just the thought of what if something happened. I mean,
So I care very much what my father thinks. To this day, I care what he thinks. So if he were to look at me and be disappointed with me, I mean, that got me right here. I don't want my dad to be disappointed in me. So that was a negative in and of itself. That was a punishment, a corrective behavior. So it's in line with that. So I want to touch on some of these. So you said you got some sort of physical consequence for negative behavior. Why in general, did that sometimes work? Did it make you not want to do whatever it is that you did? Or can it?
Yeah.
In theory, can a physical consequence make you not want to do what it is that caused that? Why? Why does that work? Because does it hurt? Right, so there's that negative there is it hurts. And you think there, you connect those two thoughts of whatever, I knocked the glass off the counter on purpose because I thought it was funny. Well, that hurt. I guess I'm not gonna do that again. We talked about grounding. Why is grounding enough? Why is grounding effective?
This is like, kind of like, people like not doing it together. It's like in a sense, like prison, you know what I mean?
In a sense, it's like prison. In what way?
Well, like you said, you're grounded and you're not allowed to do what you normally do, so you kind of lose your freedom to do it.
Lose your freedom. Excellent, excellent. You lose your freedom. Grounding is kind of like prison because you lose your freedom. We had, what was yours? Or you piggyback on somebody? Ground. Oh, you were ground. I'm sorry. I'm giving credit. Credit goes to Mr. Montgomery there. So, and then we had looks and having to clean up, like labor.
Mhm.
Why is having to clean it up a form of punishment? Because I spilled something a couple days ago in my office, and I didn't feel like I was being punished. I just had to clean it up. Why is that a little different than what I'm describing?
Because it's kind of like, if, I don't know who all does this, but it's kind of like when your dogs pee in the house, like you kind of stick their face in them and tell them like they're not supposed to do that.
Right.
And then it's kind of like well, I don't want to clean it, and I don't want to have to clean it up again, so I'm just gonna avoid doing that.
It's more of a forced thing. You wanted to do something else, and now you got to do this.
Yeah.
And somebody else is telling you that you have to do that, as opposed to when I spilled something in my office, I had to do it. Nobody was telling me. I just knew it. Well, do you think there's ever an instance? We'll talk about the physical punishment. Do you think that parents ever hit their child for a reason outside of trying to teach them a lesson? Is there ever in the history of man a time where parents may have just been angry at what they did? For the 10th time in a row, this kid, I told him stop breaking glasses. I don't know why this kid thinks it's funny. I have to clean it up and I have to buy new glasses and all this milk is spilled to waste. We don't have a lot of milk money. And this kid, I don't know what's wrong with them. And they keep doing it. And it's making me so mad. Do you think that's ever happened? Maybe no. And parents have ever just hit their kids, use physical punishment. Not because what we were describing here, because we're going to sit them down and teach them a lesson and try to make them a better kid. But just because I'm so mad that I'm gonna hit them. Has that ever happened, you think? Yeah, it's a crime, but it's happened. It's not necessarily a valid form of punishment, but it occurs. So we have different forms of those types of punishments in our criminal justice system. One of those types of punishments, let's see, we'll kind of get away from children. The idea that if somebody does wrong to you as a person, as a member of society, they deserve to be punished. And not necessarily deserve to be punished, but they deserve to be punished by you or through your own actions. Maybe not, you can't send them to prison, but you are going to be the reason why. The idea that if somebody did something to somebody you loved, Mr. Ward, something's horrible, and the idea that maybe you wouldn't act on it, but in your heart, you thought, I'd like to do something bad to them now. I think it's a fairly natural desire, reaction. The difference is we're a little more rational, and sometimes we put some thought into it and we don't do it. Other people do. Can we think of a word for that? If somebody does something bad to you and you just do something bad back?
Retaliation.
Very much like retaliation. Retaliation or revenge? If I were you, I'd write down the word revenge. Revenge is a very personal emotional desire to get back at somebody who's done wrong to you. So in the criminal justice system, we don't necessarily have a lot of ability to get revenge lawfully, but it can be a motivation to ensure punishment. So if somebody does something wrong to you, somebody will go back to that breaking into the car. If somebody does wrong to you, you want them to go to prison because you know what? Forget them. They're going to prison because they did me wrong, and I'm going to make sure. I'm going to testify. I'm going to make sure. Of the 7 theories of punishment, that first one we would call revenge because of that emotional, personal connection. But we talked about another term. Mr. Wharf said retribution. You said retribution, right?
I said retaliation.
Retaliation. Oh, well, now I give you credit. Here I am. I'm taking Mr. Montgomery's credit away. I'm giving you extra credit. It's early today. So, retribution. It sounds a lot like revenge. Just by pure definitionally, it sounds like revenge, but it's not. The idea of revenge, I said, is very personal in nature. You did something wrong to me. I want to make sure something bad happens to you. Retribution is more global, more universal, more societal. You did something wrong to society, so society's going to make sure that you get yours. And that's where we draw the line between revenge and retribution. The third one we're going to talk about is very, very similar, and then we're going to start kind of getting away from that idea of revenge and retribution. The third one we call just desserts. Just desserts being the best way to describe is that these people are just bad, so they deserve to be punished. The idea, not so much that we're going to get back at them, but if you do something bad, then you deserve to have something bad done to you. Not that I have made a decision. In revenge, you did something bad to me. I deserve to be able to do something bad to you. But just as there's, we're saying that you did something bad, so you deserve to have something bad, no matter who does it to you. I don't have to do it to you. I mean, it's not revenge. Society is the only one who can do it, but it's not because you did wrong to society. Just you're bad. So bad people deserve bad things. That's what just desserts says. And I think we can all agree, just because you break the law, it doesn't make you a bad person. But we're using these as generic definitions. Bad people deserve bad things. People that break the law are not necessarily bad people. They did a bad thing. We talked a little bit when we talked about that corporal punishment. You said you got a whooping when you did something wrong. The idea and the way I heard you explain, we talked about it's because it hurts to get a spanking. It makes me think, well, if that hurts, I don't want to get that again, so I'm not going to do whatever it is that caused me to do that. What does that sound like? What theory of punishment does that sound like? The idea of deterrence. A very, very commonly held theory of punishment, deterrence. In the world of criminal justice, deterrence is absolutely huge. One of the very significant, most important reasons why we have a criminal justice system and a punishment aspect, a correctional aspect of our CJ system, is the fact that we want to deter crime in the future. If we do something that people don't like to them, maybe they'll think twice, maybe they'll get their mind right, and they won't do it again. That is the basis of deterrence. One of the key philosophers and criminologists that discussed deterrence was Jeremy Bentham. And I know I've mentioned in passing already rational choice. I would remember that. Rational choice, the rational choice theory being that somebody is going to make a decision. If they can make a rational decision, they're going to decide whether or not they're going to break the law based on whether there's a more or less benefit in breaking the law versus the punishment that comes with it. Or knocking the glass off the counter, or doing whatever it is. It works for punishment for children. discipline for children and punishment for adults. It's all the same theory. The idea that I'm going to make a rational choice, a decision, I'm going to weigh it out. Economically, a cost benefit analysis between here is what I want to do and here's what might happen if I do it. And if what might happen when I do it is less than how much pleasure I get from doing it. If, for instance, robbing a bank resulted in a $5 fine, that was the punishment. If every time you rob a bank, there's no such thing as prison in our society, in this imaginary society, there's no such thing as prison. You're gonna get a $5 fine every time you rob a bank. Do you think that would stop a lot of people from robbing banks? Why? How much money do you think you can get from a bank robbery? Are you gonna get more than $5? If you benefit more than $5 in robbing a bank, and the punishment for robbing that bank is $5, why would you not rob that bank? That's just a good financial decision now. The punishment has to deter the crime in order to be effective. That's why the theory of deterrence works, and that's what Jeremy Bentham said, 1789-ish. So the idea, a couple things have to be in place there. If you're going to deter crime effectively, according to the rational choice theory, you have to make sure, and I kind of go back to the dog peeing on the carpet example. You have to be sure that the punishment is swift. If you come home and the dog peed on the carpet 8 hours ago and you rub the dog's nose in that carpet 8 hours later, do you think that dog knows why you're doing it? Probably not, maybe not. You're not sure, at least. But in the example of the dog, if they do it right away, there's a connection, right? So, Jeremy Bentham said that that has to be swift. You have to have the punishment shortly after the offense. Also, he said that punishment has to fit the crime. And not in those words, I'm paraphrasing. There has to be a proportionality to the punishment in order for that punishment to be effective. It can't be too low. If it's only $5, then it's not going to, you're not going to stop robbing banks. But also, it's not going to be effective for society to be too much, he said. If the punishment for spitting on the sidewalk is death, then people are not going to be satisfied in that society. There has to be a balance. Let's talk about the literal way in which deterrence works, why it works. Two ways. One, we're going to go back to the corporal punishment you talked about. That hurts, so I don't want to do it. That is deterrence. That is the very basis of deterrence, because next time, when I'm presented with the opportunity to do whatever it is that caused that spanking, I'm going to think about that rationally and weigh that out. If that hurt enough last time, I'm not going to do it. If it didn't hurt enough, then I am going to do it. There's your decision, your cost and your benefit. Many, many things in life are a cost-benefit analysis. Almost every decision we make. So in this criminality decision, the decision to engage in criminality, it's a cost and a benefit analysis. However, that's just for us. I'm doing a cost-benefit analysis for me to decide whether or not I want to break into this car versus go to jail. I want to rob the bank versus the $5 fine. If I want to knock the glass off versus the spanking. However, once that decision is done, if there are siblings in the scenario that saw their sibling get in trouble for knocking the glass off, and they saw their sibling get the spanking, how is that going to affect their decision? Right, if the siblings saw you get a spanking for knocking the glass off the counter, and next time they have an opportunity to knock the glass off the counter, they never knocked the glass off the counter and they didn't get a spanking. You got the spanking, but they saw it happen. They saw the whole thing go down, and now a week later, there's a glass of milk on the counter, and they've got an opportunity to knock that off. What is going to go through their mind today? They didn't get one of them, right? They didn't get hurt. They know what'll happen. They never had to get that spanking to know what's going to happen. Bingo. Please write this down. 2 types of deterrence. Specific deterrence is when you got that spanking. The idea that, ouch, I don't want that to happen again. I'm going to make a decision to not do that because I'm never going to get that spanking again, or that grounding, or that prison punishment. We're back to corrections. I broke the law and now I'm in prison. I don't want to get in prison again, so I'm not going to break the law. General deterrence, that is specific deterrence. General deterrence is the sibling. I saw my sister knock the glass off. She got a spanking. Heck no, I'm not doing that. I never had to get that spanking. I've never gotten that spanking. I've never knocked off a glass of milk. But I know what's going to happen. And because I know what's going to happen, it's going to prevent me from making that decision. That is general deterrence. If we put people in prison, or we punish them, or we fine them, and you see what happens to people who break the law, you don't have to have that punishment in order to know what's going to happen if you break the law. It can prevent you from breaking the law. Specific versus general deterrence. The 2 portions of the deterrence theory. If we drive down Business 70 and we see that the trooper has somebody pulled over, getting a ticket for speeding, we don't need to get a ticket for speeding to slow down. Because I don't want to get a ticket. Now I see what happens if you speed. And on top of that, the person who got the ticket, they're also going to learn their lesson. Unfortunately, they got the ticket to do it. They are experiencing specific deterrence. Everybody that drives by and slows down is experiencing general deterrence. Let's talk about grounding. If, well, this scenario that you get grounded in is because you broke curfew. You're supposed to be home at 10 o'clock and you came home at midnight. 17 years old, you came home at midnight and you were drunk. So parents were upset and now you're grounded. Is that a reasonable scenario? Okay. While you are grounded for the next 2 weeks and stuck in your room, you're not allowed to go out. Are you going to break curfew? Are you able to break curfew? Why can't you break curfew if you're grounded? Okay, if you can't go out, you can't be late, right? And chances are you're probably not going to come home drunk, right? While you're stuck at home. Why aren't you going to come home drunk? Right. You can't leave. You can't do that thing that caused you to get in trouble. And you likened it to, or one of you, I don't want to steal it again. One of you likened it to being in prison. Okay. So it's like being in prison. Absolutely. Grounding is very much like prison. In this theory, the theory of incapacitation, that's our fifth. Yeah, number 5, theory of incapacitation. It says that if you can't obey the rules outside of prison, then we're just going to put you someplace where you can't do that anymore. It negatively affects me if people rob banks. It negatively affects me if there's somebody out there shooting other people, or if there's somebody out there committing sexual assault. Like, all those things negatively impact me because I'm in society. I don't have to have it specifically happen to me. If there's somebody out there breaking into a bunch of cars, I don't want them in my society, even if my car didn't get broken into. I just don't want them here. If I scoop them up and put them behind big walls with bars on their door, they can't break into my car. They can't shoot people. They're just not available to do that. They're grounded. They can't come home drunk anymore. The theory of incapacitation says that we're going to incapacitate them from breaking the law. I don't have to deal with you anymore. Like, I'm safe because I just got rid of you. I'm not trying to change your behavior as an offender. I'm not trying to change their behavior. I'm just saying, I don't want to deal with you anymore. You can't break the law if I put you over here. We're done. You can't obey the rules in society, then you don't get to be in society. So examples of incapacitation versus trying to change behavior. If somebody robs a liquor store and gets 5 years in prison, and the next time they rob a liquor store, they get 10 years in prison. Now they spent 15 years in prison already. You would hope that they wouldn't rob a liquor store a third time. But if they do, after you've robbed liquor stores for 3 times in a row and you've been stuck in prison for 15 years, you should have learned your lesson. And as a society, we say, 3 strikes and you're out. You don't get a chance to rob a 4th liquor store. The 3 strikes law in some jurisdictions gives you a life sentence or similar 25 to life, a lengthy sentence for your 3rd violent felony, where you're like, I gave you a bunch of chances. If you can't stop doing these things that we don't allow, you don't get another chance. You're gonna go behind big walls, and now I don't have to deal with you robbing liquor stores anymore. I'm not trying to change your behavior because you don't get to get out anymore. I don't care what your behavior is. Kind of like what Mr. Core said. I'm not going to invest myself in you anymore. I just don't care. And if you don't care, then just throw them away and lock up the key. Now, what is the opposite of love? Anybody know what the opposite of love is? Some people say hate, yeah. Other people say that the opposite of love is apathy. I nothing you. I don't hate you. I have to have emotion to hate you. If I nothing you. Some see that's a lot worse. In the sense of incapacitation, some could say that society has nothing them, just thrown them away. Now, maybe society has a right to, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. It's just a perspective that they just don't care anymore. In the same way, the relationship, you can spend time not, being sad or not liking or hating that individual, or at some point, you nothing them. They just are nothing to you anymore. And if you 3 strikes laws, that type of life sentencing, just gonna throw away. They're still obviously you're gonna feed them and house them. You're not literally nothing. They're not literally nothing to you, but society is not going to necessarily invest in them anymore. We gave them an opportunity, and that's what incapacitation is. There's one final punishment that I want to talk about that is the ultimate form of incapacitation. If you kill under the right circumstances, or you kill multiple people, if you lie in wait, you kill a law enforcement officer, you kill a federal official, any of those special circumstances, then you can be eligible for, the offender can be eligible for the death penalty. Once that death penalty is served, is executed, once somebody is executed with the death penalty, they can't kill anymore. That is the ultimate form of incapacitation. We have ensured that they will never do that crime again. Now, the idea of the death penalty can be a form of deterrence. It has been questioned, the efficacy of that punishment has been questioned. Studies have shown that the fear of the death penalty does not prevent murder. However, the service of the death penalty absolutely prevents murder because that person can't kill again. That is the ultimate form of incapacitation. The last one we'll talk about is rehabilitation. We kind of bring it all back from the beginning, but the idea that we are investing in somebody, we're going to punish them as a form of investment. We're going to have programs. We already talked about educational programs and physical programs. What about substance abuse programs? Can we agree that the use of narcotics can lead to an increase in crime? And I think we can all say that. If you can't afford your dope, then you got to steal to get dope. There's going to be crime. And if we can engage the offender with some sort of rehabilitative program, narcotics rehabilitation or alcohol rehabilitation or substance abuse rehabilitation, to get them to a point where they don't need to use this substance, then perhaps we are investing in them to ensure that later we don't have that crime. And that's what rehabilitation is. Hoping that we get that return on investment that we talked about earlier. Whether it be through psychological counseling and therapy, religious services, education, skill building, substance abuse rehabilitation. There's just a ton of them, and you're gonna talk about in your discussion board the idea of budgeting and which ones of those are important. We got one, the seventh one. So that was number 6, by the way. Rehabilitation was number 6. Number 7, restoration. Some people confuse it with rehabilitation or associate with rehabilitation, but the idea that I talked about getting my car broken into and having my stereo stolen. I'm out of stereo. That is why that harms me. Restorative justice and the idea that we can rebuild, we can have the offender rebuild or repay their debt is the idea of restorative justice. It can be literal through court-ordered restoration, where if the offender steals $1,000 from you, they can be ordered to pay you back $1,000 if being restored. But it could be that they don't have that $1,000 anymore, or they never did. They committed a violent crime and they didn't gain anything, so they have nothing to give. So we can put them in a place where they have to restore society other ways. Examples of that could be, and not solely because some of these theories overlap, but as we do labor, if you're picking up trash on the side of the road, you are doing a service for society. You are restoring society in a way. However, picking up trash on the side of the road is also something I don't want to do. So it could deter me from breaking the law. While I'm under guided supervision of the prison guard, I'm probably not going to break the law. So it's also incapacitating me. So there's a lot of overlap there. So we talked about the seven theories of punishment. We call them, we call them the 7 theories of punishment, but it's not 7 theories of incarceration, because you talk about children, same thing. And there are other forms of punishment outside of incarceration. Not all of them are applicable. So we talked about having the state trooper pull you over on business 70. You're not incapacitated from speeding because they're going to let you get your fine and you're going to go. You can speed again if you want. That's a punishment, not an incarceration. So you're not incapacitation is almost exclusively to incarceration, but deterrence can be anything. It can be spanking, it can be a ticket. It could be that you don't want to receive the death penalty. Like I said, there are studies that have shown that there's not a lot of deterrence. Deterrence doesn't play a big factor in the decision to commit murder. But it could be for some people you say, well, I don't want to be executed, so I'm not going to commit this murder. But I would say that there's a little more passion in the act of homicide. So maybe you're not able to make that rational choice. Because what we said about Jeremy Bentham was when he was advocating for this rational choice theory, is that you have to literally be rational to make these decisions. If you're going to do this cost benefit analysis, there has to be rationality there. That's why it's not just a choice theory, it's a rational choice theory. So the idea that you can remove rationality from some of these decisions is dangerous. One of the ways we do that is through intoxication. If you commit homicide while on drugs or alcohol, perhaps you weren't rationally weighing out your cost and your benefit, or if you're in the middle of a rage incident, you walked in on somebody that made you completely furious and you weren't thinking straight, you committed homicide, things like that there is no rational choice, it's just a choice, just a reaction. So one thing to remember about Bentham's RTC, rational choice theory, is that there has to be a modicum of rationality in that analysis. And that can be removed. It's not permanent. Rationality is not permanent. So he assumed that when making these decisions, that you're going to make them rationally. You're walking down the street and saying, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm gonna break in this car, or no, I'm not, and here's what I'm gonna weigh out. That does not apply to crimes of passion or intoxication, things like that. Thoughts on what we discussed today? Thank you so much for your input. I appreciate the examples. You guys nailed it. I went back to the ground, so I couldn't ask for more. Thank you so much.